What's up YouTube? So today I want to discuss a couple of effects that are quite well used in the Goa-Trance genre. I'm going to probably end up splitting this into two videos because I've got quite a lot to cover. So today's episode I kind of want to cover a little bit about distortion, saturation, and reduction, and these types of things. So this actually came up in the comments of my video on the D16 for Zion, or the 303 emulator plugin. I think somebody commented something along the lines of how could you use a 303 sound without any distortion on it, and I was kind of saving that for this episode because saturation and distortion and those types of things is such a prevalent kind of sound in Goa-Trance. Specifically on these kind of like leads, you know, it was often used to create this kind of very gritty kind of sound, which you can hear in a lot of Goa-Trance tracks. So I kind of wanted to cover it all in a single episode and show you guys a couple of tricks and some of my favorite plugins and stuff to get these types of effects. So let's dive in and have a look. So I've created this kind of like acid lead sound using D16 for Zion. You can create a very similar thing if you follow the other tutorial. I'll try to remember to post a link in the description. So the plugin actually does have a built-in distortion, but the reason I like to rather use distortion as an actual effect is because you've got the ability to kind of like EQ pre the distortion, and I think that's quite an important thing. Specifically when you're using distortion or saturation that doesn't have that kind of control built in, but I'm going to get to that just now. So just for reference, I'm going to play you guys an example of what this sounds like. So one of my current favorites at the moment is Cytomic's The Scream. I believe this is a emulation of the Ibanez Tube Screamer pedal, which was incredibly popular in that kind of era when Goa-Trance was, gaining its most popularity. And a lot of guys actually used this on 303, the actual pedal. They'd plug the 303 synth into that. And the really cool thing about this plugin that's, very forward thinking, I'm not going to dive too in depth with it, but the really cool thing about this plugin that I think makes it very, very unique, and, it's quite a powerful tool for, specifically for a genre like Goa, where, you're very much trying to create your own very unique sound. It allows you to kind of modify the internal components of the actual pedal, much like, actually opening up the pedal and swapping a diode for a different value of diode, or a resistor or capacitor for a different value of resistor or capacitor. So like I said, I'm not going to dive too in depth with this, but it's an incredibly cool plugin because it allows you to kind of, it's got this very easy to use kind of interface, but you can kind of mod the distortion to, be your own sound, and then use that sound throughout your, productions and stuff like that. So this is a very cool kind of, set it and forget it type of distortion plugin that I'm really, really enjoying at the moment. It kind of sounds good just out the box, but again, it allows you to kind of really fine tune it. Something that you don't often see in plugins, let alone distortion sort of plugins and stuff like that. So this is a really, really cool plugin, and it's actually surprisingly affordable considering, how advanced you can actually get with it. One thing about this particular plugin, but I guess it's, due in part to the fact that they're trying to emulate the actual pedal, is there's no kind of pre or post equalization going on, which other distortion plugins like Decapitator and stuff like that, they have. And I think that's very important for creating, this type of acid sound, because, you'll quickly hear when I add this distortion just as is to the sound, it's going to get very boomy because there's actually a lot of low end coming through from this, from the 303 sound. So let's have a listen and apply this distortion and have a listen to what's going on here. So you do have this tone control. However, I find it's not quite enough for this type of lead. It does sound very kind of boomy and stuff like that. I'll often end up applying an EQ before the distortion, and that kind of allows you to really shape the tone of the sound before, overdriving it with a distortion plugin. So have a listen to the difference now. So I think that's kind of like the trick that I use to get those kind of really clean sounding distortions. I try to kind of clean up the tone before distorting it. That way you kind of remove that boominess. And I find specifically with something like an acid lead, it then cuts through in the mid-range much better. And it's much more audible, and you don't have to pump it as loud in the mix to be able to get that kind of full effect, and therefore leaving a lot more space for other stuff to sit around it in the mix. So another really awesome distortion plugin that I'm enjoying at the moment is Decapitator. So this is also very cool. It's very simple, very easy to use. It's got this kind of like low cut built in, so you can actually, carve out that kind of tone to kind of get a slightly cleaner sound. Often I find when using Decapitator, I don't have to go back and EQ pre, because I've got like this kind of control over the frequencies over here. But anyway, this punish sounds really, really awesome on these kind of 303 acid leads. But you've also got various styles here you can choose from. There's a lot of kind of variety that you can get out of this plugin. But again, I find I often end up just slapping it on, adding punish, driving it up, and then playing with this low cut, and it's kind of like an instant, awesome, gnarly distortion sound. So another distortion that I'm thoroughly enjoying at the moment is the phase distortion by Kilohertz. And one really cool thing about this, I kind of briefly outlined this in a previous tutorial, is the Snap Heap and, actually all of their kind of like plugin hosts have these kind of envelope and modulation capabilities. And when you've got something like a particularly punchy lead sound, like an acid lead or 303 type lead or something like that, it can get really interesting to create some modulation using like an envelope follower, because you're able to kind of drive it each time that kind of note hits, and you've got the control to kind of create this envelope for that. So if you're not following, check this out. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to play the audio, and you're going to kind of see the response of this envelope over here. So if we switch it to ADSR mode, it kind of detects the peak of the signal, and then you can adjust this ADSR like this, pretty similarly to like how you could like actually generating the tone in a synth. But I really like to kind of assign this to the drive. That way it's kind of punching through, and you've got this kind of envelope control over that kind of like distorted sound. Check this out. And this tone sounds absolutely amazing. No need to actually add like another filter or something. I mean, we could, but we could just apply this kind of like LFO maybe to the tone, create some variation over a sort of bar or two. So we could sync it or we could leave it free depending how we want to do it. I'm just going to go with this, and you can kind of add it to your taste, depending how you want to fit it into the track. You could kind of slowly rise it like this, or anything like that. So due to the kind of modular nature of this plugin, we could add an EQ. And similarly to how I was doing it here in the actual kind of inserts, but this way we can kind of save this as part of the kind of distortion, removing those low frequencies. So let's open up Slice EQ and let's put on a low cut. Kind of like creates this grittiness, but it's still very clean, and you've still got a lot of control. You can kind of spread it left and right to create this kind of wide distortion sound, which is really, really great. So another favorite that I've been using a lot lately, in fact, it's something that's, most DAWs will actually have a built-in kind of a bit crusher, they call it. So in Cubase, it's actually, I think it's been in there since like Cubase 2. And it's a kind of classic effect. And you'll quickly hear, before I actually dive into Decimort, I want to show you what the sound is, and you'll be like, okay, that's the one. For those who don't know what a bit crush sound is, this is going to be that kind of light bulb moment, hopefully. So what I actually want to do here is I want to turn off the automation that's happening in Fosion over here. I just find that, doing it like this, it'll become a lot more audible rather than having that filter going over here. But anyway, so what the bit crusher is essentially doing is it's reducing the kind of resolution of the audio signal, but live in a plugin. So it's kind of like pixelating the signal, so to speak, and this is kind of what it sounds like. So for those that didn't already know what like the bit crusher sound is, it's kind of that like vocally distortion type of thing that you often hear in, old school Psytrance, Goa-Trance. It was quite popular in like the early Twilight and stuff like that as well, specifically with like kick and bass breaks as well. They used this a lot. But it's cool to kind of like create that kind of like vocally sound using a bit crusher and then filtering it, creating like a band pass or a low pass filter, and therefore kind of like creating this varying effect on that sound. I find, actually tweaking the parameter of the bit crusher, it kind of has these steps, which is a little bit too noticeable. So that's why I kind of like enjoy using this Decimort plugin by D16. And reason being is it's actually got a filter and everything built in. The sort of resampler algorithm sounds amazing, so it doesn't have as much kind of like steps, but I still like to kind of set it to a particular sound and then tweak the filter. So let's play around with this a little bit. I kind of want to do a little bit more kind of effects processing and that kind of stuff in a different video. I kind of wanted to cover all the saturation, distortion, little tricks and stuff and favorites in one video. And I think I pretty much covered everything that I wanted to in this video. Awesome, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Let me know what you think in the comments. Also, let me know what are your favorite distortion, saturation plugins, and let me know what kind of tricks and stuff you use to create these kind of effects or to kind of clean up your distortion for a particular sound. A big thanks to IDM Mag, proud supporters of the dance music scene and my channel. As always, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. See you guys next time.